scheme?
The scheme currently has got limited capability of verifying the affidavits that get presented by students as part of the application process. On a sample basis, therefore, on some universities, they tested some of these affidavits, and they found that there was a fair percentage of these affidavits that were not really truthful. That's how we found out that there is some students that are providing information via the system of affidavits that is not necessarily true.
But what are the precautions that you as NSFAS are taking to prevent these students from doing this and being caught at the same time?
What we're doing is we now started piloting a centralized system of application. The advantage with the centralized system of application is we have now linked it up with Home Affairs, for instance, because part of the untruths that were presented in the affidavits was a student would say, my father or my mother is passed away. And that information, we will now be able to verify it via the Home Affairs database, because if we get the ID number of the parent, we will then know whether the parent is alive or is dead.
Is that the reason why you ran out of funds?
Not necessarily. I think, from what we have seen, this was a sample test that was done in 1 or 2 universities. It's not something that we have done on a wider scale. But as part of the scheme's initiatives, we're trying to root out any form of misrepresentation so that every cent goes to the deserving students.
Linking your database to the Department of Home Affairs, did that help bring the numbers down in terms of these fraudulent cases and providing the relevant students with that funding that they require?
It's still early days. This is the first year of the pilot. We're still in that registration period. We'll be able to report back in and around March, when we've finished the first round of registration, to report on the cases that were found and the analysis of the problem. We have taken also a sample of universities this year, 5 universities. We're not taking the whole population because this is a bigger change for the system. But the indications are that the Home Affairs link is going to help the system greatly.
Now, give us a breakdown. What does the figures look like? How many deserving students didn't get funding this year that were supposed to get funding?
Again, because we're now in the middle of Feb, most universities close their registration towards the end of February, and then we'll be able to have a tally at that point. The numbers that are being used are still very much preliminary. When someone says thousands of students will not get funding, because some of the students are getting absorbed by different funders. What typically happens in the system is you would find that a student would apply to 3 or 4 universities, and they might get funding reserved in the 3 or 4 universities, but they will eventually register in one place, and therefore the next group of students will then be accommodated through that gap that is opened up in the rest of the universities that the student applied to but did not register.
Now, early on you indicated that you don't have financial problems, but you got an extra R1 billion from government. Why was that?
The core issue in the scheme is there's many applicants compared to the number of applicants that could be funded. We have got a supply and demand mismatch, which means the supply of money is 9 billion, but the demand or the expectation from students is much greater than 9 billion. Therefore, any cent that gets added into the system is welcome, because it means that we'll be able to fund a bigger number of students.
What are some of the other challenges that you have at NSFAS in terms of funding? For instance, former students, do they make payments back to the scheme after they've graduated?
I think the biggest challenge for the scheme is the supply and demand mismatch. There is also a residual issue of us at any given point in time trying to find all the former students to repay. I must say that we're collecting about 400 million rands a year from former students of the scheme. And we think that that could be increased marginally, maybe by another 10%. And that would help to fund another group of students. But also we're improving the efficiency in terms of the administration of the scheme. That's why we're rolling out new systems to be able to communicate to students much earlier and tell them the results of their application, so that we don't come into January and they still don't know what's going on with their applications.
What does the future look for NSFAS? Does it look brighter? Do you foresee more students really repaying those funds back into the scheme?
I think with the technology platform that we are building, I think there's going to be a greater linkage with students throughout their career. We're also running campaigns to inform former students of the importance of repaying, because every cent that gets repaid into the system gets used to fund the students that are currently studying.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at the system as such, not perfect as such, as you say, you're working on it with Home Affairs. Do you think really that will change the landscape, as it were, right now for NSFAS?
It definitely will. I think, part of our initiatives in terms of the new system is to be able to link up with various databases that we have in the country. Home Affairs is one such. We're also talking to the South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, because we want to compare the data of the students that come through the social grant system, so that in some instances we don't even need to do an assessment if it has already been done by another government agency. That's why we're opening up discussions with various government agencies to be able to share data and make much more informed decision on who qualifies for funding.
Mr. Daka, what's your advice to deserving students out there that probably, if they didn't get the funding this year, for next year, 2015?
The greatest advice I can give to students is they must always apply on time. It's always important, because it is easy to run the system when you have got everyone has applied on time, because we can be able to engage with potential funders on time, because we will get the data early enough and know how many needy students are in the system. But the problem is students usually just come in after the results are out in January and want to start applying in January, and that time is usually too late.
And how do they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with us. We've got our contact center. They can also get in touch through our website. We also have email that they can send us. And there's also we in the social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. They can get hold of NSFAS in a variety of ways.
So all they can do is just Google NSFAS.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daga, for your time.
Thank you very much.
And that was, in our Cape Town studios, the CEO of NSFAS, Msulwa Daka.